It's Amanchu. Welcome to Minecraft Bedrock vs. Java, where I play both versions of the game and compare them. Yes, it's been a long time since I said that. For the last few months, I've been playing on Divergence SMP, a Bedrock realm, and doing everything in Bedrock. But I recently made a farm for mob heads on that realm, and it occurred to me that there are some important differences with how things work in Java that would require a different approach for a mob head farm. So here I am in my Java world to make a farm for mob heads in Java Edition. Now you may be wondering, if you're like 80% of people that play Minecraft and you just play Bedrock Edition and don't play Java Edition, why should I care how to make a farm in Java Edition? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people that make videos about Minecraft on YouTube play Java Edition. And they really don't have a good grasp of the mechanics of Bedrock Edition and how things work there, and have no idea if the stuff they do in their Java Edition worlds actually works in Bedrock Edition at all. I'm going to try and get into details about how the two versions are different, and how the differences in this case means making a farm for mob heads has to be done very differently between the two versions. There's two really big differences that have a big impact here. When a charge creeper blows up, all of the other creepers, skeletons, and zombies that it blows up drop heads in Bedrock Edition. But in Java Edition, when a charge creeper blows up, one of the other creepers, skeletons, or zombies drops a head. You only get a maximum of one mob head per charge creeper explosion. Another important difference is when you throw a trident with the channeling enchantment at a lightning rod, it'll get lightning to strike that lightning rod. It has to be raining for that to work in Bedrock Edition, but in Java Edition it's not good enough to just be raining. It has to be a thunderstorm. And thunderstorms are relatively rare. You'll get one on average every 2.5 hours real time. So because of those two differences alone, I can't just make one big mob farm, wait for it to rain, and get lightning to strike all of the mobs in the holding tank, and create a charge creeper and then blow up that charge creeper. I can't do it that way. It's just not going to be efficient enough. Instead, I'm going to have to collect a bunch of creepers ahead of time, and then hit them all with lightning at the same time, so I have a whole bunch of charge creepers built up to use one at a time to create mob heads, one charge creeper at a time. So essentially I'm going to have to build two farms, one for creepers and one for creeper, skeletons, and zombies. I happen to be building this farm above an ocean, so I'm going to start by taking 2 stacks of scaffolding and pillaring up 128 blocks in the air and starting to build the farm from there. So I'm starting from Y191. That's where the bottom of the farm will be. I should also point out that at first I had a little trouble with the scaffolding because I forgot it works the opposite between Java and Bedrock. To actually pillar scaffolding up in Java Edition, I have to place the scaffolding on the side instead of facing the top of the scaffolding and placing it on there. I have to face the side and pillar up that way. It's the opposite of how it works in Bedrock Edition, and when I switch back and forth between the two versions, using scaffolding gets confusing. In this Java world, I'm using a sim distance of, I believe, 10? Anyway, it's above 6. So I need to be 128 blocks away from anything where something can spawn. In the Bedrock realm, it was sim distance 4, so if I was, say, about 44 blocks in the air, that was high enough. Using a smaller sim distance is usually easier for making farms, unless it's going to be something really, really huge. And this farm is not that. The first thing I'm going to build is a holding tank to hold all of the creepers and then turn them into charge creepers and save them up to use one at a time. I'm going to make a 6x6 tank and put a lightning rod near the center of it. And then there'll be water streams on one side flowing to one edge. And instead of having a solid wall of glass on the edge that the water stream's pushing the creepers to, there's an opening at the bottom and then powered rails running across that opening. Now, in Bedrock Edition, it wouldn't quite work like this because water streams will break rails at this point. I don't think it's supposed to work that way. I think it's a bug, but currently, as of 1.19.84, water streams flowing over rails will break them in Bedrock. In Java, the rails actually stop the water stream, and I'm pretty sure that's how it's supposed to work. Now, if you're placing rails underwater, a rail placed in a water source that's waterlogged doesn't break, so that does work in Bedrock Edition. Next, I'm going to have a channel with packed ice on the floor of it and water streams over the top that will push the creepers from the creeper part of the mob farm to the holding tank. Now, it turns out that packed ice isn't really necessary here. It does allow items like string to flow very quickly down the stream, but it doesn't seem to push the mobs any quicker, so it was probably unnecessary to do it this way. The reason for making this channel at all, rather than just dropping the creepers straight down into the holding tank, is I need the holding tank to be exposed to sky in order to allow lightning to strike and create the charged creepers. So it has to be out from underneath where the creeper part of the mob farm is. Now, this is what might be the most expensive part of operating this farm. In order to get a bunch of creepers and save them up for later and turn them into charged creepers and not have them ever despawn, I have to name them all. I collected 2 full stacks of name tags, so 128 name tags, and I'm actually only going to use half the name tags at any one time, but I'll get into why that is later. The point is, I need to name all the creepers so that they'll never despawn, and in addition to that, they won't take up the mob cap, so I can have other mobs showing up in the blast tank to actually blow up with the charge creepers. Here I'm getting rid of the glass near the end of the runway where the creepers are going to come down and replacing them with trapdoors. And this will give me access to the creepers as they come by in single file, allowing me to name tag them one at a time as they go by. All the creepers are going to drop into this 3 block by 8 block pit, with water streams pushing them into the channel, and the channel leads to the holding tank. Directly above this is a 19 by 19 platform with walls around the outside and a 3 by 3 hole right in the middle, centered directly over that. There'll be water streams around the outside that push the mobs toward the center. Note that I'm not putting any water streams in the corners. The corners are actually filled in with solid blocks to prevent the water streams from becoming water sources and making a big lake. All the creepers will drop from the spawning platforms directly above that, down onto that big 19 by 19 platform, and then to the center 3 by 3 hole in the middle. Here you can see me placing powdered snow right over the middle of that 3 by 3 pit, and there's also a solid block that I'm leaving right in the center of the 3 by 3 pit. That's because the spawning platforms I'm making for creepers are also going to allow spiders to spawn. The solid block right in the center of the 3 by 3 hole makes it too small for a spider to get through, and the powdered snow is going to cause the spiders to freeze and eliminate them that way. So I don't end up with spiders coming down that drop chute, which isn't big enough for spiders anyway. Now, admittedly, it's going to take the spiders a while to get eliminated by the powdered snow. That makes it not so efficient, but I'm not really concerned about efficiency here. This isn't a creeper farm for the purpose of collecting gunpowder. This is for the purpose of building up enough of them to turn into charge creepers and use to get creeper heads. It doesn't have to be super efficient, super fast. It just has to give me creepers and nothing else. And this will do that. Once I have all the water sources, the outer wall, I put slabs on top of that so they are actually spawn proof, because it's going to be dark in that area to allow the spawning platforms above to spawn mobs on. I don't want any spawnable area around the outside. Unfortunately, I did make a little mistake here. One of the sides of this platform with water streams is a little too long. I fix it later and just make it a block shorter. It's not a big deal. Now I'm starting to build the first actual spawning platform for creepers. It's 15 blocks across, and it's going to be kind of a diamond shape. There will be a dispenser right dead center of it, facing upward with a water bucket in it. that will put out a water source right the middle, and that will have water flowing over and covering the entire platform and nothing else, so it pushes any mobs that spawn on that platform off of it. The redstone I'm using here is going to be something that only works in Java Edition. You can modify it to work in Bedrock Edition, but it's not as great. Let me show you how that works. Each platform has a dispenser in the center, in the floor, facing upward, with a water bucket in it. 2 blocks above that is an observer that's facing upward toward the next platform above it, where there's a dispenser that it's facing with a water bucket in it. And above that dispenser, 2 blocks above it, another observer facing up to the next dispenser. 2 blocks above that, another observer facing up, and so on and so forth till I get to the roof, where there's going to be an observer facing up into a note block, and I'm going to have a timer that triggers that note block periodically. When that note block gets triggered, the top observer senses it, sends a pulse to the empty space below it where there's nothing there, and that activates the dispenser beneath that empty space. It's a principle called quasi-connectivity, which means you don't actually need a block there. It can just be an empty space and it still works as if there was a block there. That's a Java Edition bug turned feature. Doesn't work that way in Bedrock Edition. To get it to work in Bedrock Edition, you would have to switch it around so the observer faced down toward the dispenser below it. And when it sensed a change in the space above the dispenser, that observer would activate the dispenser above it. The problem with doing it that way is the observer is going to sense when a water source is put in the center there. It's going to sense when a water source is taken away and you just have flowing water. And then it's going to sense a change when the flowing water goes away and you just have empty space. It means each observer activates multiple times every time you trigger it. And you also are obviously going to have to put the timer at the bottom of the farm instead of the top of it for Bedrock Edition. Don't worry about it. Don't build it like this in Bedrock Edition. It's not the best way to do it anyway. You can use scaffolding, like I did when I made a farm like this for mob heads in the Divergence realm. I use scaffolding. It's just a better way to do things. This is a situation where you could, modify the redstone to make it work in Bedrock, but it's less optimal. You probably shouldn't do it that way in Bedrock. Creepers are shorter than zombies or skeletons. So by placing trapdoors on the ceiling above every spawning platform, it's making the area too short for zombies or skeletons to spawn, allowing only creepers or spiders to spawn. I've already explained how I'm going to use powdered snow to get rid of the spiders. Now, there's another way to do a creeper farm where you use cats to scare the creepers off the platform as soon as they spawn in, and you could spawn-proof the floor to prevent spiders from spawning, like by using carpet. In Java Edition, the spiders are more picky about the area they need to spawn in. It means it's easier to spawn-proof the floor against spiders in Java Edition than in Bedrock Edition. But regardless of that, I didn't really want to do it that way. For one thing, I didn't want to have to work with cats. For another thing, I think the range at which a creeper will be scared away by a cat isn't really very high, so the spawning platforms would have to be a lot smaller. Anyway, I just found it easier to work with redstone than work with cats. What can I say? Now, normally if I was making a mob farm to get the best efficiency and get the best rates, I would alternate so that when one particular platform was flooded, the platform above and below it would be dry. And then it would alternate which platforms are flooded and which are not. Because when a platform is flooded, it'll push all the mobs that are already there off, but it won't allow anything to spawn on it. By having every other platform dry at any given time, there's always a spawnable space in the farm. However, I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to have all the platforms flooded at once, because that way I could deactivate the farm by having all the platforms flooded at once. Remember that I have a creeper farm, and I'm also going to have a separate spawning area for other mobs. Once I get enough creepers, I want to be able to turn this frickin' thing off so that I don't have a bunch of creepers ending up on that platform, taking out the mob cap when I want the other mob farm active. I only have 3 spawning platforms in total here. Again, I'm not worried about rates. I need to accumulate 64 creepers and then save them up and get them to become charge creepers. I don't need more than that, and I'm only getting a thunderstorm once every maybe 2.5 hours, so it's not really important to get really fast rates here. It's important to make this as simple as I can and quick to build as I can. Now, out from the roof of the entire farm, 8 blocks on every side, I'm putting tinted glass. That'll block the light, and that'll make it dark enough on the spawning platforms at all times for mobs to spawn. Tinted glass is expensive, and that's kind of overkill. It's just I happen to have a lot of tinted glass in my Java world, so I could afford to do it. I could have just as easily used slabs. In Java Edition, slabs will block light. They don't in Bedrock Edition. You'd have to use full blocks, which would mean that I'd also have to take steps to spawn-proof the roof so nothing spawns on top. The timer I'm going to use to trigger the redstone below is an Athonian hopper clock. It's a nice timer in that you can change how long it goes depending on how many items you put in the hoppers. I'm not going to go into any detail about how it functions. You can even look up on the Minecraft wiki Athonian hopper clock and it'll show you a layout of it. Just remember that to make it in Java Edition, the pistons must be sticky pistons. If you're making in Bedrock Edition, you can build it the exact same way, except you don't need sticky pistons, you can use regular pistons. It'll work just as well with regular pistons in Bedrock Edition. There is one mistake in this Athonian hopper clock that I didn't catch until much later, after I had the farm going for a while. Remember I have trap doors on the roof of every spawning platform? Well, everywhere that I put redstone dust, and everywhere that redstone block can move to, it can power the block below it. And right underneath the block below it is a trap door. So every time the Athonian hopper clock had the pistons move and move that redstone block, every time the redstone dust powered, it would cause some of the trapdoors near the center of that top platform to open. So I had to replace the blocks that I had underneath this Athonian hopper clock in certain key points with tinted glass, which doesn't conduct the redstone power, and that fixed the problem so the trapdoors would stay closed all the time. Now, before I start working on the blast tank for generating the mob heads and the separate spawning platforms for creepers, skeletons, and zombies, I wanted to actually accumulate the creepers that I was going to turn into charge creepers. Name them with a name tag and just keep them there so that if a thunderstorm happened to occur while I was building the other farm, I could immediately take advantage of it. Now, I didn't use both stacks of name tags at the same time. I just used 64 of them, named 64 of the creepers, and left the other half. The reason I did that was because I was worried about entity cramming. Is a feature of Java Edition where if you have too many mobs occupying the same space, they'll start to suffocate, take damage, and eventually perish until they get down to that limit of the entity cramming limit. By default, that limit's set to 24. If you have more than 24 mobs occupying the same space, they start to get hurt. So I didn't want to pack too many creepers into that holding tank at once for fear that I might have some get hurt and waste the name tags. It turns out to be advantageous that I did that because I made a fundamental flaw in the design of the blast tank that cost me a lot of creepers. So it's just as well I had another stack of name tags to try again after rebuilding everything. Ooh, thunder, 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 thunder. Okay. Let me put name tags on these last couple guys. That's going to be 64 name tags I've used. So there should be 64 creepers in there. Okay. Now let me turn this farm off. Okay, let me hit these guys. Looks like I lost a creeper in the process, but that's fine. I don't want lightning to naturally strike that again, because, you know, lightning does do damage. It could end up eliminating these creepers. So what I'm going to do is just cover up the location where that lightning rod is, so it's not exposed directly to sky. That should keep lightning from just naturally striking there. So I have probably 63 charged creepers in there now, because I lost one. Ooh, look at that. That is fire. But now they're there for as long as I need them. Long enough for me to build more spawning platforms to spawn all kinds of mobs, and a place where I can blow up those mobs. Now I'm going to build the blast tank. That's where I'm going to send the charged creepers to one at a time and have it mix with other mobs and then blow up the charged creeper. But here's where I make my big mistake. Now the blast chamber itself is made of obsidian, so that's going to survive any blast from the charged creepers, but it's not as tall as it should be. The top of the blast chamber and the other blocks made of stone brick and glass are too close to the explosion and they will break. In addition, the holding tank for the charge creepers is still in range of the bottom of the blast chamber where the charge creeper blows up, which means that big tank full of charge creepers, they're all going to take damage every time I set off a charge creeper. So over time, they start to die off in the holding tank, and I lose a lot of charge creepers from that. I should have made the blast chamber much taller, and I should have made it further away from that charge creeper holding tank. After I run it for a while and use up all the charge creepers in the holding tank, I don't get a lot of heads from it because I lose so many. And I have to tear down the whole frickin' thing and start over. I tried to just put obsidian blocks around that holding tank for the charge creepers to absorb the blast. It didn't work. I ran out of obsidian and ended up using crying obsidian for part of it, but it just wasn't working. I had to move the tank, tear the whole thing down and move it, which meant I had to go to the end and tear down one of those pillars in the central end island so that I could get more obsidian to rebuild the blast tank somewhere else. Huge pain in the butt, but eventually it worked out. Put some slabs in there. That'll keep any baby zombies from getting out, but those will probably break when I ignite the charge creeper. The next thing I'm going to do is build 3 spawning platforms for zombies, creepers, and skeletons. And it's going to be the exact same design I used for the creeper platforms, just without the trapdoors. Exactly the same. And that's about all there is to the design of it. You've kind of seen an ant's eye first-person view of it. Let me show you the entire build in a time lapse. Okay. Yeah, you can see little sparkies from the lightning rod that indicates that there is a thunderstorm going on right now. I do hear thunder. I might have an issue with... Oh, crap. Hurry. Oh, damn it. I'm gonna have an issue with phantoms. It's been a while since I've slept. Just get the lightning to hit. Get the lightning to hit the lightning rod. To hit the lightning rod. Hit the lightning rod! There we go. Alright, now let's see if I can get to sleep and get rid of these phantoms. I just want to sleep! There. Let's see if this works. Whoops, I went up the wrong one. Okay. Here we go. We got a creeper. They went in the hole. Now let's get this out. Break that. And light them up. And it worked. I got a zombie head. Alright, light it up. There's a skeleton head. Break this thing. Light it up. Yeah, sometimes this happens where the minecart like lands on these mobs' heads and I have to eliminate enough of them so that the minecart will drop down. And light them. Goes up. I get one mob head. And I replace all those slabs. And recover the minecart. Rinse, repeat. Now if you're thinking... this is just giving me a random mob every time I want a specific mob. Well, say you specifically wanted a skeleton. Just use an axe, get rid of everything that's not a skeleton, and then blow up the charge creeper. There, I have a skeleton skull out of that. But I'm content with doing it randomly. It gives me a nice even distribution of different mob heads. Last guy. Okay, so here's the end result. The first attempt when the blast chamber and the storage tank for the charge creepers was too close, I got this top row here that's a total of 19 heads out of 60-something creepers, so that's not great. The second time, from 63 creepers, I got 58 mob heads. I lost a few probably because they'd been damaged already from me accidentally hitting them with tridents, or they might have taken some damage falling through the powdered snow, and then they didn't survive the drop into the blast chamber when they rode the minecart down. So I probably lost about 5 that way, and that's why I only got 58 mob heads. Definitely the Bedrock Edition version of this is a lot easier to do. I also got, a bunch of other stuff. Just from the fact that there is a general purpose mob farm in this. And, a few other select items here. Well, this farm was a lot more work than I expected it to be, but I did in the end get it to work. The Bedrock version of this, yeah, it was a lot more straightforward. But as I said before, I've done this in Bedrock Edition, and in Bedrock Edition, it's a lot more straightforward to make this mob head farm. If you want to see that, check out this video here. And if you've been following Divergence SMP and following what I've been doing on there, rest assured I am far from done there, but I'm really looking forward to 1.20. Lots to do when that happens. And thanks for watching Amon Chooses Minecraft Java vs. Bedrock.